everybody listening out there, so you never know when your crushing defeat might just be giving life to somebody else.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like the circle of life in tennis.
Yeah.
It's
the circle.
One dies, the other one lives.
Yes.
Welcome to the Shankcast. Today's our introductory episode. Alongside me here is Kevin and Megan. What's up, guys?
Hey
Hello
guys.
there.
How's it going?
Kevin's got his podcast voice on.
I'm working that podcast voice. How you like it, guys? give me some sort of shout out.
Megan, have you found your podcast voice yet?
No, I just realized that Kevin's is really weird.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see how long he keeps that up. So this is just a quick
accepted.
This is just a quick introduction. This is not a normal episode. We just kind of want to let you guys know what our vision is for the show, what our goals are, what we have in mind for the content, and who we're really making this for and why. And then we'll share a couple personal stories about our on-court experiences to help you get to know us a little bit better. And I think we'll get to know each other a little bit better too. I'm guessing the stories we'll throw out there will probably be new, at least some of them.
Yeah,
I always like throwing out stories that Megan's never heard, and she'll go,
He just makes them up.
For all your life, and I've never heard that story.
I literally
Now you
said that
have.
5 minutes ago this morning before we walked in here, just so we're clear.
Got to keep her on her toes.
You got a long time left, Megan, to learn about Kevin. All right, so vision for the show, and we'll kind of go around the horn here and talk about, because we totally, just like everything else at Essential Tennis, we're making this up as we go, and so this is open. This is a totally organic, open thing. I want to leave it open to the audience, if anybody listens, to
That one person that's listening.
yeah. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
I want to leave it open to Kevin and Megan as well, whatever direction we want to go to. But we definitely have a very clear picture in mind starting off, and that'll become really apparent in episode number 1, this is, again, just a quick introduction. First and foremost, we want to make this show entertaining. We make a crap load of content weekly that's very, very focused on outcome. We want you to get better. We want you to learn. We want you to increase in knowledge.
X's and O's, baby.
And understanding of the game. He's just the hype,
Yeah.
although negative hype man. He's
Right, yeah.
pulling it back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Pulling it back.
Oh, just wait.
So this is going to be the opposite of that. This is going to be us basically doing what we do every day normally, which is argue about different topics. Argue is maybe the wrong word. We like to have spirited conversations about different tennis topics. And I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to this. I think a core element of our relationship, the three of us, which is kind of awkward, is there's a base of respect and disagreement.
Yeah, we all come from things that at 3 different complete angles.
Really, what they're trying to say is I'm different from both of them.
No, Ian and I are very different, and we come
Actually,
at
I
things
think you
very
guys are
differently
more
too.
similar than, you guys is weird. You guys have some interesting similarities in a lot of things that I've noticed. Your quirks about details. Ian, I won't call out any names, but he saw this thing and literally he could not move past this certain picture because the elements of the picture didn't rhyme with what he thought.
Megan is pretty OCD.
Yeah, Megan was the same way. She'll say something or see something. She's like, I cannot watch this because that person missed the comma.
Mm-hmm.
For me,
not
it's
a comma, though, 'cause
video,
I can't spell and have
written,
horrible
whatever. It's
grammar.
whatever little quirk is I can't watch that because she said this whole thing. And I'm like, but the intent, the concept is but I just can't. So I think there's some similarities there.
Yeah, and that's, I think, basically me, not to get into, we're going to talk about tennis in a second. But, yeah, I think that's, me and Megan's, the most friction comes from the fact that we're both, really obsessive compulsive about different things.
Yeah.
And, yeah, that tends
And so
to...
they butt up.
Yeah, our
Sometimes,
personalities
yeah.
are pretty different.
And Kevin's just weird, so he's an outlier.
So anyway, we have I think a pretty, especially in the tennis world, there's so much backstabbing and talking behind people's backs, and And maybe you guys do that about me all the time. But as far as I know, like
Can we? I was gonna say, what are we on the language barrier here?
yeah, what did we do? Are
What
we
did we
going to try to
discuss?
go
Yeah, we're going
rated G?
G.
Okay, cool.
Oh.
So we're going to attempt to...
Ian's a good guy. How about that? Backstab with love.
I think we've struck a pretty good balance, which I think is very difficult in a professional setting where we can strongly disagree on things, but still respect each other's opinions, at least a little bit.
Most of the time.
And so to me, that's the core of this show, is the ability to openly just totally like disagree about things relevant to tennis players around the world. Like when they step out on the court, they're going to understand what we're talking about. But it's not going to be like your average, like, oh, we all work together, so we need to be careful and not like hurt each other's feelings. Like my like goal for this is we actually say what we're thinking.
I'm smiling right now, both inside and outside.
Yeah, I think it's just like every day what we do on a regular basis. I think we're all very opinionated anyways.
Yeah.
And so, and especially when it comes to tennis and from our experiences and how that shapes the way that we look at
That's the thing. We all have
tennis.
somebody's knocking on the wall.
Nice.
We all have a pretty deep experience and understanding around the game. And so if we're totally actually honest and candid and we bring that to the table and talk about like the underhand serve, I think it's going to be a really good format.
Which I'm so excited about, just FYI.
The real question is always, I think, is going to be like which side of the topic is going to be the two coaches and which side of the topic is going to be the one coach. Because it's very rare that we all are in alignment, like on the same thing.
Yeah, when we are, it's kind of weird. I'm not going to lie.
You hit a drop shot when you're supposed to hit it inside out beforehand.
don't
But that's
even
a
get
whole
us
nother
started.
story.
Yeah. So that's kind of one element. The other one was entertaining. Like it's not going to be instructionally based, but I do see it being helpful in the sense that I think when players hear us just talk through the underhand serve, for example, I think it'll be helpful from the standpoint of hearing other perspectives and maybe perspectives of people that have been around the game for a long time at high levels and low levels and everything in between and have done it professionally. And so I think hearing those perspectives, I think for a lot of amateur players could potentially be really helpful to maybe sort out in their own mind how they feel about X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, it's not going to be like this is how you hit a forehand or
Right,
this is the strategy you use in this certain situation or something like that. It's going to be very abstract in that sense, I think. But super helpful, I think, too. Amateur players in the sense of really knowing what your coaches are thinking out there, as well
You may
as
not really want to know.
yeah, as well as like trying to figure out what kind of coach like you want to surround yourself with, and what kind of tennis players and tennis friends and all kinds of stuff that you want to surround yourself with to really increase your level of play.
Definitely.
And fun.
What do you think, Kevin?
Totally. No, I think I'm just gonna crack jokes and like stir things up all the time. I do that.
So one of
anyway.
us says something you disagree with, and then it's gonna be all
and then
serious.
it's gonna
Yeah.
be Then
Exactly.
we're gonna turn up that dial.
All right, and then lastly, the last thing that I really see as being a differentiator with this show, there's a lot of great tennis podcasts that are already out there, but most of them are either instructionally based, like the Essential Tennis Podcast, or they're pro game focused, and it's like tour focused. Mm-hmm. And we don't have time for that. We don't have time to watch tennis, or at least I shouldn't speak for you guys.
No, we don't.
We are either on a tennis court creating content, or we're on a tennis court coaching a student, or we're in the office publishing and promoting and taking care of customers and et cetera, et cetera. And we don't watch a lot of tennis. So I don't have time, like, for it to be like a real, like,
You would have to do the back work, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You got to put in the time of knowing, like, what is the context of everything that's going on. And I don't think any of the three of us it would be fun, but I don't think any of us have a big like strong desire to actually be in the know about professional tennis.
Plus, I just think it's a unique thing.
To be clear, we have a general sense of like what's going on, but
Right, yeah.
we can't speak like in an educated way about what this means about the next tournament and the last time these two play at XYZ.
Right.
Sorry.
And the points associated and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
More big picture stuff.
Right. But I think it's really, that's what makes this unique, is that it isn't about pro tennis. Like a lot of the other podcasts out there are just about pro tennis, or they're about very, very focused, like Essential Tennis Podcast, like very focused on improvement and that kind of thing. So this kind of walks the middle ground between all of the people who are actually listening, and that's the level that we're actually speaking about.
What do you think, Kevin?
I agree. I think it's just a different take on. Yes, I did say I agree. It's a different take on kind of mixing and matching our own experiences and how we see things versus maybe taking the outside look at the world of ATP Tour and WTA Tour tennis, and adding our own flavor to that.
You should do voiceover on Fiverr.
Really?
Dude, I love Fiverr. Just as a side note. They're not sponsoring us, by the way.
But they got the free plug.
All right. So now let's get to the sharing. So I just thought it'd be nice to, for those of you, that's the end of like what to expect and kind of our vision for the show. We'll see what happens. Like, who knows? We literally just came up with this idea like 2 weeks ago, and now we're sitting down and doing it. So we'll see how or if this evolves in any particular direction. But those are our plans for how we'd like this to go. Episode 1 is going to be next week, and we are going to talk about the underhand serve.
Super excited.
Pros and cons.
I have very strong feelings about the underhand serve.
Is it dirty or not dirty? Is it disrespectful or not disrespectful?
And I'm in 100% agreement that Kevin's going to disagree 100% with what I have to say.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
This could also turn into could be example of marriage counseling too.
Nice fringe benefit, you know?
Yeah.
You guys get to work it out, and
Ian's basically hoping that we get no
Yeah.
document on there.
I'm just gonna sit back and
Let these guys roll.
but for right now, I thought for those of you still listening, thank you, Mom. It might be nice to share a little bit about ourselves and our past as players and coaches. And I totally left this open to Kevin and Megan. I suggested that when Allison and I go out on a date night, or just in general, when we're like sitting down and we're both having a hard time starting conversation because we're both super introverted and awkward. So like a go-to that we use is highs and lows. Like, what was the highest point of your day?
So funny.
What is the lowest point of your day? And it pretty much always kicks off a good conversation about something. So
We've never done that.
Yeah, we've never done that. We just talk over each other.
yeah, Alice and I sit down for 5 minutes and just kind of like side eye each other, and then
It's
sooner or later
interesting.
one of us has to
It's
start
like
talking.
the opposite of our date night too. We just continually talk and talk over each other, and then get angry at each other for talking over each other.
It's
It's
a
pretty much
battle.
exactly every date
Battle.
night. Yeah.
Which is interesting because Megan's very extroverted and I'm actually pretty introverted. I have this weird
Yes,
switch of
yeah.
introvert extroversion where I introvertedly need to recharge, but I can be very extrovertive. I think it's just being in the tennis industry, being in like the different positions I've had to be in, being like leaders of groups, kids, I've had to learn to be very vocal.
You have to, yeah. You can't take charge
Yeah.
without.
And I'm kind of also extreme where it's like I become vocal, but like extremely vocal. So yeah, you heard that.
So highs and lows is going to be of our tennis. I told them the tennis career.
Tennis career, wow, that's
It could be as a player. Both mine are as a player. I have a hard time thinking. I mean, I could do specific coaching highs and lows, but if I'm going to go macro tennis highs and lows, they're definitely both as a player. But I told them it could be as a coach, it could be as a player. We're looking for like the highest high and the lowest low.
I have two that definitely
All right.
like shaped my entire tennis career.
Kick us off. Let's go around and do, how about highs first, and then
Okay.
we'll do, or should we start
I
with
think
lows?
we should start with lows.
Start with lows?
Yeah.
All right. Finish on the highs?
Yeah. So people keep listening. They don't want, so they're not like, meh, lows. So a high for me, I think was,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, sorry, my bad. Okay, lows. So, sorry, I have to change my brain. So probably one of the biggest lows in my career of playing, which was not very long since I got hurt, if you didn't know, but was when I was playing this tournament. I'm from Wichita, Kansas. And so we played this tournament where everyone went and played it because the trophies were like as big as you were. They were literally,
That's why it was popular, is
yes,
because of the
100%.
trophies?
Yep.
Nice.
The trophies were like 4 feet tall. They were, massive. And so it was like the one tournament in Wichita that all of us played that were actually played, all around the United States. And so I had a friend enemy who
Friend of me.
yeah. Who we competed in everything. We both played basketball, we both played tennis, we both played the saxophone. Like, we competed in everything that we did. And this was about 6th grade or so, I'm thinking. And we came up and we played in the tournament. And I can't remember what where it was in the tournament exactly. But I had won the first set, and I was up in the second, like 4-1, a substantial amount. And we went over to the sidelines, and she started talking to me and started like, oh, so what are you going to do after the match? Blah, 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 blah. All this kinds of stuff came out. And so I started talking, which we don't normally do. Kevin's like smiling because he sees where this is going.
Psychological warfare.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, I just like could not focus, and I started losing, and I lost the second set, and I lost the tiebreak. And I vowed, like after that match, I was so mad at her, first off. But I vowed that I would never allow someone to get into my head just by talking. Kevin gets in my head every day.
Kevin.
Yeah. But from that point on, I always set my stuff on the opposite side of the court of my opponent.
That's a good play.
And all the way through my teaching, I told all my students to always set their stuff across and told them that story. And I think it really pissed me off enough to make me mentally tougher, as well as it showed me that you can really the tides can turn in 5 seconds.
So if you're playing Megan, just follow around the court and talk to her.
So how you doing, Megan?
Yeah, exactly. That 100%, like that it just threw me off more than anything had ever done before. And it really shaped my mental thought process from there on. And even, like I said, all the way through my coaching to this day, like I tell people, don't put your stuff on the same side.
You want to give her a shout out?
Amanda Cervantes.
Oh.
She's sitting somewhere smiling.
Yeah.
She
like,
coaches
"That's right."
tennis. She coaches tennis.
Oh.
Yeah. Her whole
And
family.
she coaches all of her players to go on the same
Yeah,
side.
exactly.
you're
She would
losing,
crack up as she was listening
Talk
to this. Yeah.
to your opponent.
Follow them to the other side of the net.
Yeah, that'd be hilarious. I would totally tell my kids to do that.
Yeah, you would, 100%. So that was probably my biggest low of playing that really shaped my tennis thought process.
Kevin, you're me.
That was my. I'll go. It's interesting because I was thinking about lows as a player, and I've had losses and I've gotten mad over the years, but they've always kind of encouraged me to. I'm one of these, again, weird. Megan will tell you I have these weird quirks, but they've always encouraged me to I get super, super mad, throw in my bag, be totally mad, but then go out and go run 5 miles or go do something. So for me, the lowest time in my career was actually when I stopped or realized I was about to stop playing. So I had the fortunate opportunity of playing high school tennis, Division I tennis, and then some low-level professional. But I think one of the lowest points for me was transitioning out of like being a player to kind of like civilian life, in the sense of like my identity was caught up into being a tennis player. Like everything I did was about tennis. I worked out for tennis. I trained for tennis. I ate and slept for tennis. And so getting out of that was actually a little depressing, in the sense of there's a certain, I almost want to call it like player's high, in a sense of competition, and feeling when you get out of that you cannot find that sense of like individualism, competition, this sense of pushing yourself within like just the normal world. And so that was always like a huge like depression point, I would say, for me, like stopping playing like competitively. Yeah, you can go out and play a tournament, but it's different when you're like training for it. You're leading up to it. Everything around your life is focused around it. And then having to kind of like wonder, like, I'm going to coach. And I feel like one of the biggest difference between a coach and a player is that a player can be totally selfish and it's totally fine. And a coach has to be totally selfless. And I think that was the transition of like trying to find something outside of either tennis that brought those same feelings of competition and just constantly pushing, that constant push. And so I probably spent a year and a half, 2 years kind of in this weird, not like I'm depressed, but like lost, transitioning out of like competing to like not competing, and like to going to work and having to figure out, how do you compete at work? Like, you don't walk in the office and like, put the smack down on somebody.
We competed, just so you're clear.
We did compete it. So I turned a lot of those inner angst of lack of being able to compete into different competitions. Like, we'd have these courts where we would feed balls to kids and we'd hit cones. And
did you come right off of your playing effort to Tucker, or did you have something else before then?
Yeah, pretty much, because I was doing that in between, like using that to fund my tennis.
Okay.
He taught at another club before there.
Okay.
Before what?
Before we taught at Tucker Tennis.
Just wondering what
You
timeline
taught
was
at
there.
Indian Springs.
I taught at Tucker first, and then
Oh,
I taught.
in
Yeah,
Indian Springs.
I taught at Indian Springs, but then I taught at Tucker and then left.
Right, and then came back and taught there again.
Yeah. So I think that was kind of like a weird, dark, my lowest moment of kind of like one day hanging it up and saying, I'm not a player. That was like at least a 2-year-long struggle of like realizing how it's so easy to get your identity tied up into something. And then when that something's not there, realizing like that so much of your existence, your being, is tied up into what you were doing, instead of now it's totally different. Understanding that, so it's kind of both. Again, for me, we're looking back, a nice realization, but going through it, kind of a dark time as a tennis player to like not associate myself as a player. Mm-hmm. Did you see that coming?
No. I feel like I need to process that, but I'll go into mine. That was good. That was a good one. Yeah. So sorry, my brain is just thinking about that. So yeah, for me, definitely my most like depressed, like lowest state was, first of all, I'll try to make this as short as possible. Just a little bit of context. I came from a family that didn't have a lot of money. I paid for a lot of my own lessons, and so I never did like the high performance thing, and I didn't really know how bad I was how good I was until like a couple years after college. I didn't really have the perspective of like, oh, this guy I played with like went and tried to do challengers and got his ass handed to him, and he was way stronger than me. And I didn't have that like perspective until after college. So for me, I always had this like kind of emotional like chip on my shoulder, like like what if, my family did have money and I could have like maybe made it and been like in the back of my mind, I wanted to be a professional like tennis player, but I didn't really know like what that meant until much later. And so I played high school tennis just 2 years, junior, senior year. I was homeschooled up until my junior year. And I knew my junior year where I wanted to go to college. And since I knew at that point, like, okay, I'm not going to like make it on the pro tour, college tennis was like my fixation. Like if I could make the team where I wanted to go, which was like top 20 Division II NCAA. I went and watched them train like my junior year, my senior year of high school. I went and visited Ferris, and they were like gods to me. Like they were, ranked nationally in Division II individually and as a team. So like unbelievably talented and skilled players. And the idea of maybe somehow walking on that team was like my ultimate like fixation and goal in life. And I trained myself hard the summer going into freshman year and then freshman year. And the way that the team filled the bottom 2 spots, the first like 5 spots on the team out of 8 players were recruited players, scholarship players. The 6th player was not a scholarship player. And then there was like usually a 7 and 8 like reserve, player that was just kind of a bench, warmer, maybe alternate. And the way that they filled those spots was they called it the walk-on tournament. And so every fall there would be anybody could enter the tournament, and essentially if you won the tournament, like you made the team, like you were on the team. So that was like
that's brutal.
My thing. If you lost, like then you can try again next year. And so there really wasn't like a tryout, format. You just played the walk-on tournament. And I lost it my first year in the semifinals to the guy who made the team. But he was a lot older than me. He was just stronger, more athletic than me. So I was okay with that loss and watching the team, my freshman year. Meanwhile, like I trained like on my own, like every day and hit with everybody who had hit with me. But then my sophomore year, like I knew the field, like I knew who was going to be playing, and I didn't like expect to win, but knew that, I was definitely one of the players that had the opportunity. And I played, again, I don't remember, 2-3 matches, enough to get up to the semifinals, and then played Dan Wilming. And Dan Wilming was like 6'6", super lanky, and in the years since this match has like told me that it was the best match he ever played in his life. He just treed out of his mind like the whole match. And I don't even remember what the scores were. I don't remember any specifics about the match really. But it absolutely just devastated me to lose that match. He went to the finals and then lost to the guy who made the team. And it really just crushed me, because it was kind of like it felt to me like my whole tennis,
like your peak moment.
Right. This is like my opportunity. This is my chance. Mm-hmm. And to lose to somebody that I wasn't supposed to lose to, was really hard for me. I ended up walking on the team later at the end of that fall semester, which was not my high, but it's in my top 5 probably. So I ended up getting on the team, but that loss was super difficult for me emotionally.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
All right, how about some highs?
Yeah, it's like everybody's like,
we're all down now. Okay.
Yeah. Megan, we'll go in circle again.
Okay, so probably one of my biggest highs was, I had a lot of highs actually that I really enjoyed.
I'm sorry, real quick. Definitely no disrespect to Dan. Like, he later, like years later, told me he was like playing out of his mind. Like he was a good athlete, had good skills. But I was supposed to win that match. Dan, if you're listening, no disrespect.
But I was supposed to win. So yeah, I think, I mean, I had a lot of highs that I remember playing, a lot of really cool things. I think tennis lets you do a lot of really neat things, travel the world and do a lot of cool things as a player. But one of my biggest memories of really, really being so excited was probably the first time that I ever had a high in tennis. And I was like, I don't know, probably 10 or 11. And so my parents, who both played at a high level, taught at a high level, said, okay, you can play in this tournament. And I had never entered into a tournament in my entire life. And I pretty much had not really done a lot of tennis. But for some reason, I really believed I was going to win the tournament, just because that's my personality and it's all or nothing. And so I entered and I played this girl, Marissa, who we know
Marissa.
well. And she beat the living tar out of me. Like, I'm pretty sure it was like first round, first match. And I'm pretty sure it was over in like 20 minutes. And I lost really, really dramatically. And I was really upset. Number one, because I lost and I really thought I was good enough to win. I don't know why, because I definitely wasn't. But also, my parents, I played with like a metal racket that was warped, and I wasn't allowed to play with a racket that was actually decent.
It's like one of those aluminum, like Kmart,
Yes,
like
yes,
Kmart specials.
100%.
That
Yes.
was my first racket.
And I wasn't allowed to play with a good racket until I won a tournament. Like, my parents were like, you have to win a tournament until we'll buy you a racket. And so I was really angry that I wasn't going to get a racket. And that I was going to have to play with this warped, like, aluminum racket still. Granted, I'm pretty sure that they got me a racket anyways. But anyway, so I trained really hard and, like, begged my parents to take more lessons. And I would hang out at the club that I played at from like 7 a.m. until like my parents would pick me up at 7 p.m. and just ask anyone and everyone to hit. And my whole goal in life was to go back and play and actually win. And I played Marissa again in the same tournament the next year. And I won. And that was like probably the biggest high.
So you're 12?
I was probably like, I was either 11 or 12. Like, I was younger. And she's a little bit older than me, like a couple years older than me. And so, yeah, it was, and she's heard me tell this story a few times. So
like, oh.
yeah, but it was like the one like really high moment for me, because I think it was like, and I think I lost like every match after that. I don't even remember, but I remember that it like showed me that if I trained hard and I worked hard, that even though something didn't go well, the next time around it could go well. And so it really geared me to train, and I really pushed my parents, who definitely wanted me to play basketball. Just FYI, I don't think anyone really knows that, but they all wanted me to play basketball and not tennis. And so I really, really begged to play tennis and to train more and to quit basketball at that time, and changed a lot of things to gear tennis as my goal. And I think that particular match was one of the things that really changed my thought process there about it for me. So
Thank you, Marissa.
yes, years later, she and I played on a 5-0 like 5-5 like team together in Kansas City. We both showed up, didn't know, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God. And then we still talk to this day.
Shout out to Marissa.
It's kind of an interesting
We miss
perspective.
you.
Everybody listening out there, so you never know when your crushing defeat might just be giving life to somebody else.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like it's like the circle of life
Yeah.
in tennis.
Yeah.
One-
It's a circle.
One dies, the other one lives.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure like our match that I won was like probably, 2 tie breaks or something like super, super close. I don't even remember the score. But I do remember the score of the first time we played, which was definitely 0-0
Isn't
in
that funny?
5
Yeah.
seconds.
You never forget those O&Os. Or
Yeah.
you do.
So yeah, that was probably my very first high in tennis and why it's so memorable.
And then you were hooked.
And then I was hooked.
Then you were
Never forget your first high. Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
Kevin.
Well, let's talk about my first high.
G-rated.
Yeah.
Tennis high.
I'm talking about tennis high, guys. Where's your minds? I would say preference this because kind of what Ian said, I think relates to me. I started playing tennis at 13. I didn't play my first tournament until I was 15. My parents didn't have a lot of money, so I pretty much paid for my tennis lessons through mowing grass. And so for me, every part of my tennis career, even though I had some ups and downs, was a high because I got, like, my coach told me at probably like 14, it's like, you could go play college and they'll pay for it. And I was like, what? College wasn't even on the radar. So it was like the fact that I could actually, so I like just started training hard.
You mean college tennis or college period?
College tennis wasn't on the radar. College, like how to pay for college, was not on the radar. So it was like, oh, I'll go to a community college and kind of work or do something. I don't even know. It was just weird. It was like literally it wasn't even on the radar. So to kind of like start at 13, play my first tournament at 15, and scrape by, get into a lower NAI school for the first like 2.5 years, then go to a Division I school, win our conference twice, play NCAA tournament, play against Stanford, USC the year they won it, go past that, had some cool opportunities to play in like Futures, a Challengers tournament where I got in and James Blake didn't somehow, but we won't go there. Yeah. James, I don't know what happened, but
shout out to James Blake.
Yeah. I was like, James Blake, if you're listening.
Yeah, they screwed something up and I got lucky.
We made it if you're listening.
So I played that. Actually, that was a tournament where I was walking around and I was so nervous. I had no one to warm up with, and Murphy Jensen shows up, and taps me on the shoulders. And Murphy Jensen, if you don't know, is a giant. He's an absolute, probably 6'6", giant. And he goes, "Hey, buddy, you want to warm up?" And I'm like, this guy's won a French Open Grand Slam and he wants to warm up with me, which I had no business being there at all. So we hit, and he was probably like, "Dude, what are you doing here?" And then our funny story was like, "Murphy, I don't have a collared shirt, dude. Can I borrow a collared shirt from you?" And he's like, "Buddy, I'd let you borrow a collared shirt, but it's huge." And totally let me borrow a shirt to play this challenger that I had no business being there. Years later, we saw Murphy and
audio podcast.
Yeah. Years later, we saw Murphy in Austin, Texas, and I reminded. He's like, "Dude, I won that tournament." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, dude, that was the greatest warm up ever. I won the tournament."
Nice.
And so
we saw him in a random restaurant, and he went up and told him the story.
Yeah, and so for me, and then I played some semi-professional and Spanish nationals in Spain. So my whole career has been a high because I think I had the same instance with Ian in the sense that I was in the back of my head, you wanted to be a pro, but then you started putting two and two together when you showed up at certain tournaments and you're like, these guys are way better than me and they're losing in the first and second round and they're like NCAA top 20 guys. I think when I was in Spain, I met a guy who just got to the finals of the NCAA tournament, and we just talked. He was from Germany, and he won a couple rounds, but just couldn't get through. So, but rounding out, I think the biggest high was as a coach, getting players or getting a player I worked with to get really close to winning a national title a couple of times, and that road of seeing the hard work you put in and seeing that come to fruition. And for me, I think the biggest thing was, it was always this kind of thing in the back of my head because I'd never played at that level as a junior. I just never had the opportunity to travel to different states, and I could go to a neighboring state, but I couldn't travel cross country every week. Just couldn't afford it. Literally, what some parents were paying for me to take their kid to one tournament is what I was surviving off of 2 months in Spain, or that would be my entire year of paying for tennis. And so to be able to train a kid to get to that level when I couldn't do it was probably, I would say, my biggest high of watching them succeed. Bad ow.
KG up.
drop the podcast mic in your mind.
Please don't drop it. This is the first time using
First
it.
episode, and we're down.
All right. So final high. For me, it was definitely competitive. So yeah, that was the only coaching. You and I didn't have any coaching. It's
Because I'm pretty sure you said no coaching.
No,
You
he said coaching.
player.
I said the opposite.
Oh, you said coaching experience?
Okay, so I'm just going to throw this in here.
Oh.
This
I thought
is
you said
recorded.
playing experience.
That's either one.
Oh, okay.
Just going to leave that alone.
Good job.
I'm going to back
First
away
fight
from that
starts
one.
now.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ian.
Oh, I thought you had.
I honestly thought
literally
you said
something
playing,
that-
so I specifically did not use coaching experience because I
Well.
thought you said playing.
You can listen to the episode later.
I love it. Yes.
I'm not going to
So
say
anyway.
anything here.
I was talking about the text.
You can open that too.
I will.
You want to look at it? You want to look at it right now?
Yeah, I know.
Here, this
See,
would be,
you know,
this would
this
be
is-
great. This would be great audio.
This is the time when I get to sit back and realize
for that.
it wasn't me.
For the last part, I'd like each of us to share our tennis highs and lows. What is the highest high you've ever had in tennis, and what is the lowest low? I think as a player, it would probably be best, but it could be coaching experience
Wow.
as well.
That's why I went with could be a player would be best.
My lips are
I
curling.
thought that was your underlying saying of your.
Of just like low-key do playing.
Yes. Exactly.
Alice, somewhere right now, Allison is listening and laughing really hard.
Yes.
Allison's my wife, by the way. Mm-hmm. All right, so high for me is I've done a whole podcast episode on this, by the way. I'm not going to go
That
super
was a full plug.
in depth. Yeah. Today's sponsor is the Essential Tennis Podcast. Subscribe on iTunes. Episode 303 of the podcast, I talked about this, and it was a doubles tournament. The second year I played at Ferris, I played number 6 singles and number 3 doubles my whole college career, two and a half seasons, and my junior year of college, we recruited a guy from Oregon who was going to play like number 1 or number 2. He ended up playing number 2, and he played 1 doubles with our strongest player. And it turned out he had some eligibility, like some NCAA like paperwork issues. And so he was ineligible to play the individual NCAAs in the fall, like the regional and national tournament for doubles. So instead of breaking up our number 2 team, our coach decided to put me in with our strongest player to play the NCAA regionals. And we went in unseeded, which normally they would have been number 1 or number 2 seed, one or the other. My sophomore year, my partner went to and won D2 NCAA nationals with a different player. So this is a guy that, like, as far as NCAA is concerned, is like expected to win regionals, and definitely you go to nationals by winning the regional tournament. So he got put with me, and we go in totally unseeded because it's me, and I proceeded to play completely out of my mind for 2 days straight, and I learned a ton about myself and tennis and doubles. Jason, my partner, was like incredible. He was like just the perfect partner in terms of unconditional, like emotional, support. And he was exactly like what I needed. And he got me to like a peak like state of performance like very quickly, and like kept me there. And we actually just recently had a phone conversation about this, because he didn't know I did this podcast episode, and he listened to it like a month or 2 ago, and he told me like, dude, you like carried me. Apparently he had a really bad weekend, which I had no memory of. It's kind of fun. It's kind of like me and you when we played Scott. And I was like, oh, everything's great.
And I'm like, I'm
but
playing the
Kevin's
worst tennis of
having
my
like
life.
the worst. Yeah, Kevin's playing like literally like the worst like match of his entire life, doubles match. Same kind of thing. Like I was just like so like in the zone. I didn't even realize that Jason was playing poorly. And I've only really experienced that state like a couple of times, and we beat 2 seeded players, seeded teams, made it to the finals, and against the number 1 seed. They were 8-game pro sets, which is brutal. 1 break of serve, which was my serve. We could talk about that later. 1 break of serve, we lost 8-6 in the final. Had we figured out a way to go to a tie break, maybe we would have like gone to NCAA nationals. But that was by far the best like competitively I ever played in my life. And I learned a tremendous amount those 2 days. So for me personally, that was just like the peak. Like, I'd love to. I don't know about you guys. I'd love to go back to competitive tennis. I met, like you were saying before, like yesterday, we played a couple baseline games, and there's just nothing.
FYI, there was more throwing rackets and throwing tantrums than there was hitting tennis balls.
We'll talk about that later.
I agree. Like I'll compete at anything. There's something special about tennis and like the intensity and like the it's like mental like blood sport. Like when you and somebody else who's at that like level of competitiveness is on the same court and you're trying to beat each other, it's like
it's a beautiful thing.
There's no like grunt or comment or like self-talk or like nothing like is unintentional. Like it's all like everything is like there's a purpose and like a reason behind everything, and I just love that psychological like warfare. And the best I ever like managed it was that weekend, and in the future I'd love to do that again. Like I'd love to compete again as an adult in age group competition or whatever. Anyway,
so many interesting dynamic things about your story. I almost felt like there was a love story in there for a second because you're like
me and Jason.
Yeah, it's because like you were like Jason.
We were
was
sweet
like,
mates.
Yeah, it was like Jason was the perfect support.
No, he really
unconditional. Just the way you said it was.
It'd be fascinating to hear Jason's perspective on it because he knows how I quit college tennis my senior year because I drove myself absolutely, insane. And he knows me probably better than anybody. Like psychologically, because he's seen like both like ends of low lows and high highs. It'd actually be fascinating to hear his comments about it.
Yeah, it was super interesting playing doubles with you because it was like seeing you, because give a context, Ian just finished playing a singles match and I got a chance to coach him. So it was like seeing how almost like, I would almost say you were like hyper, and I'm like, dude,
for sure,
you got to calm down. You just got to like work your way. And you're just like,
for sure.
Like, easy, buddy. And then we
just so excited.
Yeah, you're just so excited. I'm like, okay. And then we go into doubles and it's like, okay. And I'm like, okay, this could work now. And then like you're saying, it's like I was like, God, I am playing god awful. Like I was just like, this is, other than my serve, which was like the only thing. Like I had one good volley the entire match, which was literally in the first game, and that was probably a good thing because they were like, "Oh God, this guy's coming out."
Oh, totally.
Yeah, it was like a great point where it was like Scott's firing balls at me, and I'm just reacting, and he fires when I hit it for a winner. I'm like, "Come on!" And then after that, literally,
like the second point of the match.
After that, literally, there's a ball where
Kevin closed on a high ball and like hit a winner, and I was like, "Whoa!" And, like everybody was like, "All right."
Then like I proceeded to be 2 feet away from the net and fence an overhead that was probably like 2 feet above my head. Multiple times.
It didn't go in first. It went directly over the fence.
Yeah. Sorry. Good.
Just to make that distinction there.
Yeah, good distinction. But yeah, it was interesting. And you're like, dude, you're playing like
we're good.
Like, we're like. Yeah. Dude, I haven't. I don't think I made a return until like maybe like. I think I made one return when I started. Like there was this moment where I had a what's it called? What's the movie? Wolf of Wall Street like moment where I was like, I have to like I was trying to put myself up so much. I was like, I have to make at least one return this game, and it was a shank out wide, and I was so happy.
Wouldn't it be interesting to hear though the perspective, like your perspective, like not just you, but like
You
everyone's.
mean like Marissa's perspective of,
right,
of
yeah,
that match?
like everyone's and whether she really remembers it or whether she was just like, oh yeah, okay,
Just another
like
match?
as
No.
I'm going,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I've told the story a few times, and so it's just always so interesting to hear someone else's perspective on the exact same event that you have in your mind as like this pivotal moment
Yeah.
of one of your tennis like experiences.
You never know when that's happening for somebody else.
Right.
And they're either having a huge breakthrough or
like
incredible
yeah.
disaster.
Well, and a lot of times you see it different. Like you remember it differently because our minds are so warped and weird that we remember things that are so different than actually might have what happened or than what they remember. And who knows what really happened because nobody videoed stuff back then. And so it was like, it's just left to two people's memory of what happened on the court, which could be very, very different from each other.
I think most of the time our memories are like really, really bad.
Oh,
unless
for
it's
sure.
something very emotional, and then it's really, really bad because we are really emotional about it.
We assign whatever feeling like we had to it.
Yeah.
Which tennis is no exception to that for sure.
Oh, totally.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But now we have video. So yeah, going back and cutting, I cut the whole match that Kevin's talking about. Going back and cutting it, I was like, oh wow, he was playing terrible. And I honestly had no. I mean, I knew you were telling me like, oh man, this is bad, and I was like, oh, don't worry, man, you're fine. But then watching it again, I was like, wow, he really was playing terrible. And I had no like, unless I had seen the video, I probably never would have actually like believed it or realized.
It'd be interesting to put Scott and Nate like actually like sit down the four of you and talk about that match and like what actually they thought because they kept saying things that they weren't doing either and whether they knew.
It's so
like they kept saying like we're gonna come to the net and then they never actually did. Yeah,
it's so
and so whether they remember that that's what happened or whether they think of it in a different way.
Yeah.
Because there's so many matches that you play that you're like, oh, this is totally what I was doing. And then you
talk to somebody and they're like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, it's the opposite, which happens a ton in coaching too.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times the kids come off the court and you're like, dude, do you realize this is what was going on? And they have zero idea.
Yep.
Which is why video is so important. Yeah.
For us, it worked out because I think our combination of the one thing I did decent that day was serve, and you kind of like were so excited about the net. So it was kind of like, I think
it worked out
inconspicuous until like I had to actually hit a ball, and then it was very obvious. So.
All right.
Yeah. On that note.
What time is it? I think we've been talking for like an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just about. So,
if anyone's still listening,
all three
we
of
really
you
appreciate it.
Still listening, we appreciate it. Next week, and by the way, we're planning on doing this weekly. I think Tuesdays is what's going to work best for our schedule.
Same bat channel, same bat time.
I'm not sure what the editing process is going to be yet, so it might not get published on Tuesdays, but we're going to record every Tuesday with the intent of publishing weekly. So if you have any topics that you'd like, now that you understand the psychosis that we are all working with, if there's any topics that you'd like us to talk about openly and or like debate, let us know what those would be. You can send an email to ian@essentialtennis.com, which actually goes to Megan, and she'll add it to the
that could be a conversation right there.
Just kidding, I read all your emails. It's okay, nobody's listening anymore.
They shut it off a long time ago.
Let us know what topics you'd like us to talk about. Next week for the official episode 1, we'll be talking about the underhand serve. That'll be super interesting. And I'm looking forward to getting it rolling.
What do you think about the underhand serve?
Any final thoughts?
No, I think it's exciting. It'll be cool.
I'm curious to see what happens.
Yeah, hopefully one
So
person
the fun
will
part
listen.
about what we do, it's like either it's gonna go viral or nobody's gonna care.
See? Extremes.
Yep. Highs and lows.
Highs and lows.
All right. On that note, thanks for listening, everybody. We really appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe. We'll be putting this out on Stitcher, on Spotify, on iTunes, I don't know where else. We'll let you know next week. Until then, take care and good luck with your tennis.
Goodbye, everyone.